Dr. Velthari pressed her six-fingered hand against the control panel, watching the data streams flow across her screen like digital waterfalls. The research station Kethmoran floated in empty space between two star systems, far from any populated world. This distance was supposed to keep them safe while they studied the dangerous things that lurked in the dark corners of the galaxy. But safety was no longer possible. Not after what she had discovered. The scientist's crystalline eyes reflected the horrible truth displayed on her monitors. 17 star systems had gone dark in the past 30 rotations, not destroyed by war or natural disaster but consumed, eaten by something that moved through space like a plague, leaving nothing behind but empty void where entire worlds once existed. Velthari had been tracking this threat for weeks, sending report after report to the Galactic Council. Each message had been filed away or dismissed as censor errors. The politicians and administrators who ran the galaxy could not believe that anything could destroy planets so quickly. They lived in a peaceful universe where conflicts were solved through debate and compromise. They had forgotten that the cosmos held horrors beyond their understanding. The biomechanical swarm was real, and it was coming. Her team of researchers worked frantically around her. Their various alien forms bent over control panels and sensor arrays. Some had tentacles instead of arms. Others had multiple heads that could process data streams simultaneously. All of them shared the same expression of growing terror as they watched the swarm's path through their territory. "Doctor," called out her assistant, Sekmore, "the swarm has just finished consuming the Deltari system. Based on its current speed, it will reach the outer colonies in 50 rotations. 50 rotations, less than 2 months in the time measurement used by most galactic species. 50 rotations for billions of innocent beings to prepare for something that their governments refused to acknowledge existed." Velthari made her decision. If the Galactic Council would not listen to her reports, she would bypass them entirely. The research station was equipped with quantum-entangled communication arrays designed for emergencies. These transmitters could send messages instantly across the galaxy, reaching any receiver that was properly configured to accept them. She moved to the emergency communication station, her clawed feet clicking against the metal floor. The control interface was designed for multiple species, with touch-sensitive panels that could respond to various types of appendages. Her fingers danced across the controls, accessing protocols that had not been used in decades. The Galactic Defense Network maintained emergency receivers throughout civilized space. Military commanders, defense stations, and rapid response units all carried quantum communicators that would alert them to galaxy-wide threats. Velthari's message would reach them all simultaneously, providing tactical data and coordinates for immediate action. Her hands shook as she prepared the transmission. The data package was massive, containing everything her team had learned about the swarm's capabilities, movement patterns, and apparent weaknesses. She included star charts showing the destruction path, analysis of the biomechanical creatures that made up the swarm, and her best estimates of when they would reach populated systems. The message was ready. All she needed to do was input the correct transmission codes and send it to the defense network's secured channels. But panic made her fingers clumsy and fear clouded her normally precise mind. The codes were long sequences of numbers and symbols, each one corresponding to different emergency protocols. In her desperate haste, Velthari entered the wrong sequence. Instead of connecting to the modern defense network, her transmission accessed an ancient protocol buried deep in the communication system's memory banks. This was a first contact beacon, designed centuries ago during the early expansion period when the galaxy was still discovering new civilizations. Most of these old systems had been deactivated or forgotten as the galaxy became more organized and civilized. But one receiver was still active, hidden away in a small star system on the very edge of galactic space. The system was marked in old star charts with warning symbols and the notation, Sol 3, quarantined, extreme caution advised. No one remembered why this particular system had been quarantined, only that ancient records suggested it should be avoided. The transmission shot through space at faster-than-light speeds, carrying Velthari's desperate plea for help toward a small blue-green planet whose inhabitants had never been officially contacted by galactic civilization. On her screens, Velthari saw the transmission confirmed as sent. She felt relief flood through her body, believing that help was finally on the way. The defense network would receive her data, analyze the threat, and dispatch their most capable units to deal with the swarm before it could reach the inhabited worlds. She had no way of knowing that her message had gone to the wrong place entirely. No way of knowing that instead of reaching the galaxy's official defenders, her call for help was about to wake up something far more dangerous than any biomechanical swarm. The humans had been waiting in their quarantine system for 3 centuries, building weapons and preparing for the day when they would finally be allowed to join galactic society. They had spent those centuries assuming that when first contact came, it would be peaceful. They were wrong. Their first official communication from galactic civilization was a desperate military distress call, complete with tactical data about planet-eating monsters and coordinates for an immediate combat response. Velthari returned to her monitoring station, watching the swarm's slow but unstoppable approach toward the galaxy's heart. She felt hopeful for the first time in weeks. The defense network would handle this threat professionally and efficiently. After all, they were the galaxy's experts at dealing with dangerous situations. She had no idea that she had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history, or that this mistake would turn out to be the galaxy's salvation. The biomechanical swarm continued its relentless advance through space, consuming everything in its path. It had faced many different species and civilizations during its expansion across the cosmos. Some had tried to fight, others had attempted to hide or flee. All had eventually been consumed. The swarm's collective intelligence had learned to adapt to any resistance it encountered. Weapons that worked initially would become useless as the creatures evolved countermeasures. Tactics that succeeded in early battles would fail as the swarm developed new strategies. No species had ever managed to slow its advance for long, but the swarm had never encountered humans before. It had never faced a species that treated impossible as a personal challenge and overwhelming odds as an invitation to get creative. The biomechanical creatures were about to discover that there were worse things in the universe than planet-eating monsters. There were species that had learned to fight in the gravity wells of violent star systems, where everything was trying to kill you, and peaceful solutions were a luxury that no one could afford. Species that had developed weapons and tactics through centuries of preparation for the worst possible scenarios. The swarm was approaching the most dangerous predators in the galaxy, and it had no idea what was coming. In the distance, alarm signals began to sound as long-range sensors detected the first signs of massive ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. But these were not the clean, efficient vessels of the Galactic Defense Network. These were the angular, weapon-heavy ships of a species that had designed everything they built with violence in mind. Velthari's mistake was about to change the galaxy forever. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, reviewing the morning patrol reports when the universe changed forever. The massive battleship had been conducting routine exercises in the outer Sol system, testing new weapon configurations and training crews for scenarios that military planners hoped would never come to pass. Then the alien transmission hit their sensors like a thunderbolt. "Ma'am," Communications Officer Rodriguez called out, his voice tight with excitement and concern. "We're receiving an unknown signal on the emergency frequencies. It's definitely not human, but our universal translators are working on it." Chen moved quickly to the communication station, her military boots ringing against the metal deck plating. Around her, the bridge crew scrambled to make sense of what they were receiving. The Retribution's bridge was a masterpiece of human engineering, designed for maximum efficiency during combat operations. Every surface was covered with displays, controls, and weapon targeting systems. "What do we have, Rodriguez?" Chen asked, studying the data streams flowing across multiple screens. "It's incredible, Admiral. We're getting massive data dumps about something called biomechanical devourers and tactical information that, well, it looks like someone's asking for immediate military assistance against a galaxy-wide threat. The Universal Translator, a piece of technology that had taken human scientists 50 years to develop, worked frantically to decode the alien language patterns. Gradually, the meaning became clear. Someone was fighting creatures that could eat entire star systems, and they were asking for help. Chen felt her heart rate increase as she studied the tactical displays. The data showed star charts with marked destruction paths, analysis of hostile biomechanical entities, and coordinates for what appeared to be a rendezvous point. If the information was accurate, something was systematically destroying civilizations across the galaxy. "Sir," interrupted Lieutenant Commander Park from the tactical station. I'm reading similar transmissions being received by installations throughout human space. The signal is going out to at least 40 different military bases and patrol fleets. Chen pulled up a holographic display showing the locations receiving the transmission. Mars Defense Command, Jupiter Patrol Fleet, the Asteroid Mining Guild's armed freighters, even remote research stations on the edge of human territory. Someone was calling for a military response from the entire human species. This was not how first contact was supposed to happen. For 3 centuries, human diplomats and scientists had prepared for the day when they would make peaceful contact with galactic civilization. There were protocols, procedures, and carefully planned steps designed to ensure a smooth introduction to the broader universe. None of those plans involved being asked to fight planet-eating monsters. Chen studied the tactical data more carefully. The biomechanical swarm appeared to be massive, with individual creatures the size of city blocks. They moved in coordinated groups, stripping planets of resources before moving to the next system. According to the data, they had already consumed 17 star systems and were heading toward populated areas. Admiral, Rodriguez said quietly, there's something else. The transmission isn't just asking for help. It's providing targeting data, movement patterns, and what looks like analysis of the creature's capabilities. Whoever sent this expects us to know how to fight. Chen made the decision that would change galactic history. The humans had spent 3 centuries preparing for the possibility that their first contact with alien species might be hostile. They had built weapons, developed tactics, and created a military force capable of defending humanity against any conceivable threat. If aliens were asking for their help against something that could destroy star systems, this was exactly the scenario they had prepared for. Rodriguez, send a message to Fleet Command. Tell them we have a galaxy-wide military emergency and request immediate authorization for Operation Starfall. Operation Starfall was humanity's contingency plan for large-scale military deployment outside the Sol system. It had been developed by military strategists who assumed that if humans ever had to fight a war in space, it would need to be overwhelming and decisive. The operation called for the deployment of the largest possible fleet, using every available combat vessel in human space. Within 2 hours, Chen's communication board was flooded with responses from across human territory. The Mars Defense Corps was mobilizing their entire fleet. The Jupiter Patrol was converting civilian vessels into combat ships. The Asteroid Mining Guild was strapping weapons onto their industrial craft. Even deep space exploration vessels were being recalled and equipped with whatever weapons could be quickly installed. Ma'am, reported the navigation officer, we're getting movement confirmations from over 300 ships. Everything from dreadnought battleships to converted mining barges. If they can mount a weapon and travel faster than light, they're joining the fleet. Chen nodded grimly. The human response was exactly what she had expected. When faced with a threat to innocent beings, humans did not debate or form committees. They grabbed their weapons and went to help, regardless of the cost or consequences. But there was still the question of who had sent the message. Chen activated the long-range communication array and broadcast a response toward the coordinates provided in the original transmission. Unknown station, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Systems Fleet. We have received your request for military assistance and are mobilizing our forces. Please identify yourselves and provide additional tactical information about the hostile entities. The response came back within minutes, transmitted by someone whose voice trembled with relief and confusion. Admiral Chen, this is Dr. Velthari of Research Station Kethmaran. I sent a distress call to the Galactic Defense Network. Are you their rapid response unit? Chen exchanged glances with her bridge crew. The Galactic Defense Network was not a human organization. In fact, humans had never heard of it before this moment. But Dr. Velthari's question revealed an important truth. Whoever had sent the distress call thought they were contacting official galactic military forces. Dr. Velthari, we are not part of any galactic defense network. We are the military forces of the human species, responding to your request for assistance against hostile biomechanical entities. Can you provide more information about these threats? There was a long pause before Dr. Velthari responded, and when she did, her voice was filled with uncertainty. Admiral, I should inform you that humans are not officially recognized by the Galactic Council. There may be political complications with unauthorized military action in galactic space. Chen felt a surge of irritation. Political complications were exactly the kind of bureaucratic nonsense that humans had learned to ignore during their centuries of isolation. While politicians debated procedures and paperwork, people were dying. Dr. Velthari, how long do we have before these creatures reach populated systems? Perhaps 30 rotations, Admiral, but the legal issues are 30 days, Chen interrupted, converting the alien time measurement. Doctor, we don't care about legal issues or political complications. You asked for help against something that eats planets. We're coming to kill it. Send us everything you have on these creatures. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, preparing the ship for immediate departure. The human fleet was already beginning to assemble, with ships arriving at the rendezvous point from across the Sol system. They looked like exactly what they were, weapons built by a species that had learned to fight in the most dangerous environment imaginable. Human ships were angular and heavily armored, designed to survive in the gravity wells and debris fields of their home system. Every vessel mounted weapons that most galactic species would consider excessive for anything short of planetary bombardment. The fleet that was assembling represented 3 centuries of human military development, guided by the assumption that any threat they faced would be trying very hard to kill them. Dr. Velthari transmitted her data packages, providing detailed analysis of the biomechanical swarm's capabilities and movement patterns. Chen studied the information with growing interest. The creatures were adaptable and dangerous, but they followed predictable patterns. They had evolved to handle conventional galactic military tactics, but humans had never been conventional. Admiral, reported the tactical officer, based on this data, I estimate we'll need approximately 48 hours to reach the intercept coordinates. The alien creatures will arrive at the same location in roughly 72 hours. That gives us 24 hours to study the target and prepare our attack, Chen replied. Signal the fleet. We're going hunting. As the UES Retribution prepared for faster-than-light travel, Chen reflected on the irony of the situation. Humans had spent centuries wondering what their first contact with galactic civilization would be like. They had imagined peaceful meetings, cultural exchanges, and gradual integration into a larger community of species. Instead, their introduction to the galaxy was a desperate military emergency. Someone had called for help, and humans had responded the only way they knew how, with overwhelming firepower and the absolute determination to protect innocent lives. The biomechanical swarm was about to discover that it had made a serious mistake. It had attracted the attention of ASP. Dr. Velthari was reviewing the latest sensor data when space around Research Station Kethmoran suddenly exploded into chaos. Her crystalline eyes widened in shock as over 300 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel simultaneously, appearing like a metal storm around her small research facility. These were not the clean, elegant vessels she expected from the Galactic Defense Network. The human ships looked like they had been designed by engineers who assumed everything they built would need to survive a war. Angular hulls bristled with weapon batteries, armor plating covered every surface, and engines that glowed with barely contained energy pushed the vessels through space with aggressive efficiency. Unknown vessels, Velthari transmitted, her voice shaking with a mixture of relief and terror. This is Research Station Kethmoran. We sent a distress call to the Galactic Defense Network. Are you their rapid response unit? The response came back immediately, spoken in a voice that carried the authority of someone accustomed to command. Negative, Station Kethmoran. This is Admiral Chen of the United Earth Systems Fleet. You sent a military assistance request to our space. We're here to kill whatever's threatening you. Velthari felt her blood freeze. These humans were not part of the official galactic military structure. According to her knowledge of galactic politics, humans were not even recognized as a spacefaring species by the Galactic Council. Yet here they were with a fleet that could probably conquer a small star system. Admiral Chen, she replied carefully, I should mention that your species is not officially recognized by the Galactic Council. There may be political complications with unauthorized military action in galactic space. There was a pause before Admiral Chen responded, and when she did, her voice carried a tone that Velthari had never heard from any galactic official. It was the voice of someone who had no patience for bureaucracy when lives were at stake. Doctor, politics can wait. How long until this swarm reaches populated systems? Perhaps 30 rotations, Admiral, but the legal protocols require 30 days, Chen interrupted. Doctor, we don't care about protocols or authorization. You asked for help against a threat that eats planets. We're here to stop it. Send us everything you have on these creatures. Around the research station, the human fleet moved with practiced precision. Ships formed into battle groups, with larger vessels taking protective positions around smaller craft. Scout ships spread out to establish a sensor perimeter, while heavy cruisers and battleships prepared their weapon systems for immediate action. Velthari watched in fascination as the humans organized themselves for war. There were no committee meetings, no debate about proper procedures, and no requests for authorization from higher authorities. These beings simply saw a threat and prepared to fight it with brutal efficiency. Admiral, Velthari said hesitantly, I must inform you that the biomechanical swarm is extremely dangerous. They adapt to attacks, learning from each encounter and developing countermeasures. Several galactic species have tried to fight them with conventional weapons and failed. Chen's response was immediate and confident. Doctor, humans don't fight conventional wars. Send us your data and stand back. Velthari transmitted everything her team had gathered about the swarm: tactical analysis, movement patterns, biological studies of the creatures, and star charts showing their path of destruction. The humans absorbed the information with frightening speed, processing data and formulating battle plans in real time. Admiral Chen, Velthari said, there is something else you should know. Your fleet's arrival will certainly be detected by galactic monitoring stations. The Galactic Council will want to know why an unrecognized species has deployed military forces without authorization. Let them come, Chen replied. We'll explain the situation after we've dealt with the immediate threat. How long until the swarm reaches your position? Velthari checked her calculations. Approximately 72 hours based on their current speed and trajectory. Understood. We'll intercept them before they can threaten your station or any populated systems. The human fleet began moving, arranging itself along the swarm's projected path. Velthari watched in amazement as the ships took positions that defied conventional military wisdom. Instead of forming defensive lines or concentrated battle groups, the humans spread out in loose formations that seemed almost random. Admiral, she called out, your fleet positioning appears unconventional. Are you certain this is the best tactical arrangement? Chen's laugh carried a note of dark amusement. Doctor, everything humans do appears unconventional to people who fight wars by committee. Trust me, we know what we're doing. As the hours passed, Velthari observed the human preparations with growing wonder. These beings approached warfare like scientists approached research problems. They studied the enemy data, formed hypotheses about effective countermeasures, and prepared to test their theories in actual combat. But there was something else about the humans that disturbed her. They seemed almost eager for the fight. While galactic species viewed combat as a last resort to be avoided whenever possible, these creatures appeared to treat it as a problem that could be solved through superior firepower and tactical innovation. Dr. Velthari, Admiral Chen's voice came through the communication system. We're detecting other ships approaching your position. Are these your galactic defense forces? Velthari checked her sensors and felt her heart sink. Admiral, those are ships from the Galactic Defense Network. They must have detected your fleet and come to investigate. The approaching ships were everything Velthari had expected from the official galactic military. Clean lines, elegant curves, and weapon systems designed to be both effective and aesthetically pleasing. They represented centuries of galactic military evolution, guided by the principle that warfare should be conducted with dignity and restraint. They looked like toys compared to the angular brutality of the human fleet. Unknown vessels, came a transmission from the lead galactic ship. This is Fleet Admiral Zektoth of the Galactic Defense Network. You are operating in violation of galactic military protocols in space under Council jurisdiction. Identify yourselves immediately and explain your presence. Admiral Chen's response was polite but firm. Fleet Admiral Zektoth, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Fleet. We are responding to a distress call from Research Station Keth Moran regarding hostile biomechanical entities threatening galactic populations. We are here to provide military assistance. There was a long pause before Zektoth replied, and when he did, his voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. Admiral Chen, humans are not recognized as a galactic military force. You have no authority to conduct operations in this space. Withdraw your fleet immediately. Fleet Admiral, Chen replied, her voice taking on a dangerous edge. With respect, we didn't ask for authority. We came here because someone needed help. The biomechanical swarm will arrive in approximately 60 hours. Are you prepared to deal with it? The defense network has the situation under control, Zektoth answered stiffly. We do not require assistance from unauthorized forces. Velthari watched the exchange with growing horror. The two fleets faced each other across empty space, both armed and ready for combat. The humans showed no signs of backing down, while the galactic forces clearly expected immediate compliance with their demands. Admiral Chen, she transmitted urgently, please consider withdrawing. The Galactic Defense Network has protocols for dealing with threats like the swarm. Conflict with official galactic forces could have serious diplomatic consequences. Chen's response was immediate and uncompromising. Doctor, I've seen your defense network's protocols. They involve forming committees, filing reports, and requesting authorization from distant bureaucrats. How many people will die while they're following proper procedures? The truth of Chen's words hit Velthari like a physical blow. The Galactic Council had indeed spent weeks debating the swarm threat, while systems were consumed. Their protocols prioritized political stability over rapid response, ensuring that military action was always carefully considered and properly authorized. Fleet Admiral Zektoth, Admiral Chen's voice cut through the tension, we're not looking for a fight with you. We're here to deal with the swarm. You can either help us or get out of our way, but we're not leaving. The galactic ships maintained their position, clearly uncertain how to handle a situation not covered by their regulations. The humans, meanwhile, continued their preparations with calm efficiency, treating the confrontation as a minor distraction from their real mission. Admiral Chen, Zektoth said finally, the Galactic Council will hold you responsible for any unauthorized military action in galactic space. Fleet Admiral, Chen replied, the Galactic Council can send us a bill after we've saved their citizens. Until then, I suggest you move your ships to a safe distance. This is about to become a combat zone. Velthari realized that she was witnessing a historical moment. Two completely different approaches to galactic security were facing each other across the void. The established order, with its careful procedures and political considerations, confro. The biomechanical swarm emerged from faster-than-light travel like a nightmare made real. Thousands of creatures the size of city blocks moved through space in perfect coordination, their bodies a horrifying fusion of living tissue and mechanical components. They flowed around each other like schools of predatory fish, but each individual was large enough to land on a planet and strip it bare within days. Admiral Chen watched the tactical displays with professional interest as her fleet prepared for engagement. The creatures were indeed massive and clearly dangerous, but they moved in predictable patterns. After centuries of preparing for the worst possible scenarios, humans had learned to see opportunities where other species saw only threats. All ships, Chen broadcast to the fleet, remember your training. These creatures adapt to conventional tactics, so we're not going to use conventional tactics. Engage at will, but keep them guessing. The first human attack began exactly as Dr. Velthari had expected. Heavy cruisers opened fire with railgun batteries, sending streams of hypervelocity projectiles into the swarm's forward elements. The creatures reacted quickly, their biomechanical bodies adapting to absorb the kinetic impacts. Within minutes, the railgun rounds were bouncing harmlessly off hardened carapaces, but the humans had anticipated this response. Commander Maria Santos of the heavy cruiser Cerberus was the first to change tactics. Instead of continuing to fire ineffective railgun rounds, she ordered her crew to switch to mining charges. These were explosive devices designed to crack apart asteroids, completely different from military weapons in both design and delivery method. Target the creature's joints, Santos ordered. If they're biomechanical, they need articulated connections to move. The mining charges detonated against the creature's limbs, causing visible damage and disrupting their coordinated movement. The swarm's collective intelligence registered this new threat and began adapting. But before the creatures could develop effective countermeasures, another human squadron changed tactics entirely. Captain Rodriguez of the destroyer Lightning switched to directed energy weapons, but instead of using them as conventional lasers, he modified the frequency and pulse patterns in real time. Each shot used different energy signatures, preventing the creatures from adapting to any single type of attack. The battle became a deadly game of innovation versus adaptation. Every time the swarm developed defenses against one type of human weapon, the humans switched to something completely different. Industrial plasma cutters became makeshift weapons. Construction equipment was repurposed for combat. Even agricultural tools found themselves pressed into service as improvised armaments. Commander Santos discovered the key insight that would change the entire engagement. "Admiral," she reported over the fleet communication network, "these creatures aren't just adapting to our weapons. They're adapting to our tactics like a computer program, but they're not learning like people who've been fighting wars for thousands of years." Chen immediately understood the implications. All ships, new orders. Stop following any recognizable tactical patterns. I want chaos out there, but controlled chaos. Make every engagement unique. What followed was unlike any space battle in galactic history. The human fleet abandoned every principle of conventional warfare and embraced pure improvisation. Ships that should have been supporting each other split apart to attack from impossible angles. Vessels designed for long-range combat closed to point-blank range and engaged in what could only be described as space-based knife fights. The mining vessel Prospector, commanded by Captain Zhang, demonstrated the kind of thinking that made humans so dangerous. Instead of using his ship's industrial equipment as weapons, Zhang flew directly into the swarm's formation and activated his vessel's mining drones. Hundreds of small autonomous machines swarmed over the biomechanical creatures, boring into their bodies with tools designed to extract valuable materials from asteroids. The creatures had no adaptation for being eaten alive by tiny machines. Dr. Velthari watched the battle. From her research station with a mixture of horror and fascination, the humans fought like nothing she had ever seen before. They seemed to treat the laws of physics as suggestions and military doctrine as optional guidelines. Ships performed maneuvers that should have torn them apart. Crew members survived acceleration forces that should have killed them, and weapon systems operated far beyond their designed parameters. "Admiral Chen," she transmitted, "your casualties must be enormous. These tactics are incredibly dangerous for your own forces." Chen's response came back amid the sounds of combat operations. "Doctor, humans don't fight safe wars. We fight to win. Casualties are acceptable if we save everyone else." The swarm's collective intelligence was struggling to cope with the human approach to warfare. Every adaptation it developed was countered by something completely unexpected. When it hardened its armor against kinetic weapons, the humans switched to chemical attacks. When it developed immunity to energy weapons, the humans began using gravity-based tactics, flying through gas giant atmospheres to use planetary gravity as a weapon. Captain Williams of the research vessel Discovery provided perhaps the most innovative attack of the entire battle. His ship was equipped with scientific instruments rather than weapons, but Williams realized that his sensor arrays could be modified to emit focused electromagnetic pulses. Instead of destroying the creatures, these pulses disrupted their biomechanical nervous systems, causing them to attack each other in confusion. The battle raged for hours, with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. The humans inflicted serious damage on the swarm, but the creature's ability to adapt and regenerate meant that destroyed units were quickly replaced. The swarm, meanwhile, learned to counter many human tactics, but could never predict what the humans would try next. Fleet Admiral Zektoth and his Galactic Defense Network ships watched the engagement from a safe distance, their crews struggling to understand what they were witnessing. The humans fought with a ferocity and creativity that defied every principle of civilized warfare. They seemed to care nothing for their own safety, treating their lives as acceptable sacrifices if it meant protecting others. "This is madness," Zektoth muttered, watching a human destroyer ram itself directly into a creature 10 times its size, detonating its reactor core to cause maximum damage. "They're fighting like barbarians." His tactical officer, a being from a species known for their strategic thinking, disagreed. "Sir, observe their coordination. This isn't mindless aggression. They're coordinating their improvisation, sharing successful tactics across the fleet in real time. Each ship learns from every other ship's innovations." The truth was becoming clear to anyone watching the battle. The humans were not fighting like barbarians. They were fighting like a species that had evolved in conditions where innovation and adaptation were necessary for survival. Every human ship was essentially a research laboratory, testing new ideas and sharing successful results with the rest of the fleet. Commander Santos made another crucial discovery during the engagement. Admiral, I've been analyzing the creatures' adaptation patterns. They're learning to counter our tactics, but there's a delay. If we can change approaches faster than they can adapt, we can stay ahead of their evolutionary curve. How fast can they adapt? Chen asked. Approximately 15 minutes for simple countermeasures, up to an hour for complex adaptations. But Admiral, they're also starting to predict our behavior patterns. We need to stay completely unpredictable. Chen smiled grimly. Unpredictability was something humans excelled at. All ships knew tactical doctrine. Every 15 minutes, completely change your approach. If you were using energy weapons, switch to kinetic. If you were attacking individually, form groups. If you were being aggressive, try something defensive. Keep them confused. The new approach proved devastatingly effective. The swarm's collective intelligence, designed to adapt to threats and develop countermeasures, found itself constantly trying to respond to tactics that had already changed. By the time it developed defenses against one human strategy, the humans had moved on to something completely different. But the creatures were learning too. The swarm began developing meta-adaptations, trying to predict and counter human unpredictability itself. The battle evolved into a contest between human creativity and alien intelligence, with both sides pushing their capabilities to the absolute limit. Captain Thompson of the heavy cruiser Vengeance discovered what would become the key to victory. Instead of trying to destroy the creatures directly, he began targeting their communication systems. The biomechanical beings relied on quantum-entangled neural networks to coordinate their actions. Disrupting these networks caused the swarm to lose its collective intelligence, reducing it to thousands of individual creatures acting without coordination. All ships, Chen broadcast. New priority target. Focus on their communication nodes. Turn their greatest strength into a weakness. The tide of battle began to turn as human weapons found their most effective targets. The swarm's perfect coordination dissolved into chaos as communication networks failed under sustained attack. Individual creatures, suddenly isolated from the collective intelligence, reverted to basic survival instincts and began fighting each other for resources. Dr. Velthari watched in amazement as the final battle took place in the shadow of a massive gas giant, where the biomechanical swarm had gathered its remaining forces for what its collective intelligence calculated as the most defensible position possible. The creatures had learned much from their encounters with the human fleet, adapting their tactics and evolving new defenses against the unpredictable attacks they had faced. But the swarm had made a critical error in choosing this battlefield. Gas giants were exactly the kind of environment where humans excelled. Admiral Chen studied the tactical situation from the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching as the swarm arranged itself in a defensive formation around the planet's upper atmosphere. The creatures had positioned themselves to take advantage of the gravitational field, using the gas giant's massive pull to enhance their maneuverability while limiting human approach vectors. Conventional wisdom says we should attack from outside the gravity well, Chen observed to her tactical officer. Stay in open space where we can maintain formation and use our superior firepower. Yes, ma'am, the officer replied. Standard galactic military doctrine would call for a siege approach, cutting off the swarm's escape routes and forcing them to attack us on favorable terms. Chen smiled coldly. Good thing we're not following standard doctrine. All ships prepare for atmospheric insertion. We're going in. What Admiral Chen was proposing was considered impossible by galactic military standards. The gas giant's atmosphere was a roiling mass of compressed gases, electrical storms, and gravitational shears that could tear apart any vessel not specifically designed for such conditions. The pressure and radiation levels alone should have been lethal to any crew attempting to navigate such an environment. But human ships were different. They had been built by a species that learned engineering in the gravity wells of the Sol system, where space was never truly empty and everything tried to kill you. Every human vessel was designed to handle gravitational stresses, atmospheric pressure, and radiation levels that would destroy the elegant craft favored by other galactic species. Sir, reported the navigation officer, we're detecting massive electromagnetic interference from the gas giant's magnetosphere. Communication with the fleet will be severely limited once we enter the atmosphere. Understood, Chen replied. Signal all ships. Once we enter the atmosphere, each unit operates independently. Use your judgment, adapt to conditions, and remember that the goal is to protect innocent lives. not to follow orders. The human fleet began its descent into the gas giant's atmosphere, their angular hulls designed to slice through the turbulent gases like knives. The swarm's collective intelligence registered this movement with something approaching disbelief. No species in its experience had ever deliberately entered such a hostile environment during combat. Operations Dr. Velthari watched from her research station as the human ships disappeared into the swirling atmospheric layers. "Admiral Chen," she transmitted urgently, "this is suicide. The gravitational stresses alone will crush your vessels." Chen's response came back through increasing static as the retribution entered the upper atmosphere. "Doctor, humans have been flying through gravity wells for centuries. We know what we're doing." Inside the gas giant's atmosphere, the battle became something entirely new. The human ships used the dense gases as cover, appearing and disappearing like submarines in an ocean of compressed hydrogen and helium. They dove through electrical storms that would have fried the systems of any conventional spacecraft, using the lightning itself as both camouflage and weapon. Commander Santos of the Cerberus demonstrated the kind of thinking that made humans so dangerous. Instead of fighting against the gas giant's gravitational field, she used it as a tactical advantage. Her ship dove deep into the atmosphere, building up tremendous velocity, then used the planet's gravity to slingshot toward the swarm's defensive position with enough kinetic energy to punch through any defenses. The biomechanical creatures found themselves facing an enemy that treated the laws of physics as tools, rather than limitations. Human ships performed maneuvers that should have been impossible. Their crews survived conditions that should have killed them, and their weapons fired in environments where conventional energy systems should have failed. Captain Rodriguez of the Lightning took a different approach. His destroyer used the gas giant's electrical storms as a power source, channeling lightning strikes through his ship's modified weapon systems to create energy discharges far beyond his vessel's normal capabilities. The resulting attacks burned through the swarm's adapted defenses like they were made of paper. But the most devastating attack came from an unexpected source: Captain Zhang of the mining vessel. Prospector realized that the gas giant's atmosphere contained trace amounts of valuable elements that his ship's industrial equipment was designed to extract. Instead of trying to fight the creatures directly, Zhang began mining the atmosphere itself, creating a massive cloud of charged particles that disrupted the swarm's biomechanical systems. The creatures tried to adapt to these new conditions, but they had evolved for the emptiness of space, not for the complex environment inside a planetary atmosphere. Their collective intelligence struggled to maintain coordination as electromagnetic interference disrupted their communication networks. Individual units found themselves isolated and confused, unable to share information or coordinate their attacks. Admiral Chen led the final assault personally, diving the retribution through layers of compressed gas until she was directly beneath the swarm's main formation. The maneuver should have been impossible. The gravitational stresses should have torn her ship apart, and the atmospheric pressure should have crushed the hull like an empty can. But the retribution had been built to survive in the gravity well of Earth's solar system, where space was filled with asteroids, solar radiation, and the gravitational influences of multiple planets. The ship's hull was designed to handle stresses that would destroy any conventional spacecraft, and its crew was trained to operate under conditions that would incapacitate most galactic species. "All weapons, fire," Chen ordered as her ship emerged from the gas giant's lower atmosphere like a predator rising from the depths. The attack caught the swarm completely by surprise. The creatures had positioned themselves to defend against attacks from space, not from within the planet's atmosphere. The Retribution's weapons tore through their formation, destroying coordination nodes and causing the collective intelligence to fragment into thousands of individual units. Other human ships followed Chen's lead, emerging from the atmospheric layers to strike at the confused and disorganized creatures. The swarm, which had seemed unstoppable just hours before, found itself overwhelmed by attacks coming from directions it had never considered possible. The biomechanical creatures tried to retreat, but they had made their final mistake in choosing this battlefield. The gas giant's gravity well that they had hoped would limit human movement now trapped them in an environment where humans held every advantage. The creatures that could adapt to any space-based threat were helpless against enemies that fought like they lived in the depths of planetary atmospheres. The battle lasted only 2 hours. When it was over, The biomechanical swarm that had consumed 17 star systems was nothing but debris floating in the gas giant's upper atmosphere. Human ships moved through the wreckage, salvaging useful technology, and ensuring that no creatures had survived to continue their destructive mission. Fleet Admiral Zek Toth arrived with his Galactic Defense Network forces, just as the human fleet was completing salvage operations. His elegant ships took position at a safe distance from the gas giant, their crews struggling to understand what they had witnessed. "This is Fleet Admiral Zek Toth of the Galactic Defense Network," came the transmission. "Unknown vessels, you are operating in violation of galactic military protocols. Identify yourselves immediately." Admiral Chen's response would become legendary throughout galactic space. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Fleet. We came here to help. The job's done. You can send us the paperwork later." Dr. Velthari watched the exchange from her research station, realizing that everything had changed. The galaxy had spent millennia developing careful protocols and proper procedures for handling threats like the biomechanical swarm. But somewhere on the edge of galactic space, there was a species that didn't care about protocols. They just showed up and fixed problems with overwhelming firepower and tactical innovation. "Admiral Chen," Zek Toth transmitted, his voice carrying centuries of military authority, "the Galactic Council will need to review your actions. There will be questions about unauthorized military operations and violations of established protocols." Chen's response was immediate and unapologetic. "Fleet Admiral, the Galactic Council can review whatever they want." While they were reviewing and debating, people were dying. We stopped that. If they have problems with how we did it, they can take it up with the families of everyone we saved. The human fleet began forming up for departure, their mission complete. They had answered a call for help from a species they had never met, fought inhumans systematically